So officially welcoming everybody to this special day today, a very special day in our webinar series on salutogenesis and holistic health, hosted by the Institute of Salutogenesis and Complementary Medicine, Sri Balaji Vidyapeeth. Before we begin, we would like to start with a prayer in our Indian traditional manner. Om Sahana Bhavatu Sahano Bhunaktu Sahaviryam Karvavahai Tejasvinavaditamastu Ma Vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Hari Om. A very good morning to our esteemed speakers and our guests for today. The Salutogenesis and Holistic Health and International Webinar Series organized by ISCM of SBV in collaboration with the Indian Yoga Association Puducherry chapter. We began on the 9th of March with our dear Abhishai leading the way, and will be culminating on the 27th of April. We take a moment to salute Professor Aaron Antonovsky, the father of salutogenesis, and we are organizing this event and many more events to come in honor of his centenary year. That is, we are in the progress. 100 years of Professor Antonovsky is something to commemorate, of course. Today we have two excellent sessions lined up. The first one is by Professor Bengt Lindstrom, Professor Emeritus at the Nordic School of Public Health, Norway, and the world's first professor of salutogenesis. It's an honor to have you, sir, with us today, and I consider this a deep personal privilege to be hosting you online here. Along with him will be Professor Claudia from the Lucerne University in Switzerland, and they are going to be giving a joint presentation from birth to the end of life, key elements in the design of a life course process according to the Cellotogenic Model of Health. This will be followed by the second talk by Professor Ingunn Hagen, Professor of Psychology in the Norwegian University of Science and Technology, Norway, with whom we now have a memorandum of understanding to facilitate many projects. She will be talking about positive psychology and salutogenesis, community-wide mental health promotion. So at this point, I would like to introduce our first speaker, Professor Bengt Lindstrom, the world's first professor of salutogenesis at the NTNU, Norway. He has been a professor of health promotion and public health, a guest professor at the different universities, an associate professor in social policy, child public health and public health. And from our standpoint, a very pertinent fact is he is the founding member of the Global Working Group on Salutogenesis. And you'll be pleased, sir, that we are all members of STARS and attending the seminars, and we are looking forward to the learning growth curve through all of your amazing efforts. He is a medical training specialist in pediatrics, authorized in countries like Finland, Sweden, Norway, and Denmark, and has numerous publications in salutogenesis, public health, and health promotion. We take this opportunity to welcome you, sir. And along with him will be Professor Claudia, who is a professor for health promotion. She is Vice President for Partnership in the IUHPE and Global Working Group on Planetary Health. In fact, I watched a beautiful video of a conference you held on this topic in recent times. A member of the Global Working Group on Salutogenesis, working with the Lucerne University of Applied Sciences in Switzerland. She studied health psychology, clinical psychology, and has been working as a practitioner in the field of health promotion, director of the section for gender health in the Swiss Ministry of Health, and Director of Research at University of Brent. So with this short and rapid introduction, so that I don't take up too much time from our eminent speakers, we now give over to Professor Bengt Lindstrom and Professor Claudia for your presentation. Namaste.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I will start, and then after this, we will show a practical case on a video of a person who has a good capacity for life, and then Claudia goes on to speak about the sense for coherence. So we will have a sort of three separate parts or interlinked part. And I was so pleased when you showed the picture of Aaron Antonovsky. I met him 36 years ago. He was known to me, and at the time I was working with my PhD working on understanding the quality of life of children, which is an interesting question, and trying to grab this idea. It was also a time when health promotion was new and recent, and I think inspired by this and inspired by Aaron Antonovsky, I reached a better level in the thesis about quality of life of children in the 5 Nordic countries. And I think I could say that there was a shift of the understanding of health. Health was a static thing before. Health is a state. But when health promotion came around, we were talking about a process of health, a process where you learn what is steering your life, the determinants of health. And by understanding this, you can improve your health. And not only that, you can also improve your quality of life, which means to be able to lead an active and participating life, and sort of an overall lead the good life, to put it simply. But I use the WHO terms first. And trying to catch this, you have to understand that you have to understand the child and how a child thinks and what the child is to reach the child. I talk about children, a child as a collective, as a group in society. And here it's, of course, the dialogue you can create with the new human being, the child, which is important. And I try to structure this quality of life model by looking at 4 dimensions, 4 spheres of life. First, the personal sphere, which is about the physical part of life. Then it's about the mental part of life. And also the third is the spiritual level of life. And this I call the personal level of personal sphere of life. Moving on from this, I was talking about the importance of intimate social networks. That's mainly the family, the mother and the father, usually, who are sort of the ones who are closest to the child. And we know today that the dialogue with the child starts before the child is birth. When you try to conceive that there's another mind in life, the new child, and you try to connect to this mind with your mind, which we could call a process of mentalization, where the two minds are meeting. And this is sort of in the second level of life. This is the social networks and social support that the child can receive. And this is, of course, important, how it works and how it functions. We could then move on to the third level here. What can this network of social network provide for the child and for the living of the child in terms of material, in terms of learning, in terms of where you are going to live. Simply saying, the economy of the family is important for the child. They will be able to provide where the child will live and under what conditions the child will live. And of course, the fourth dimension here is the global sphere. How do society react and appreciate that there's a child in this world? Do they follow the United Nations Convention of the Rights of the Child, saying that every child should be an active participating subject in society in its own right. And this is of key importance. Most countries in the world have recognized this convention. It's sort of the legal side of the life of the child. Everything should be for the best interest of the child. Next is what kind of economy is a society wanting to provide for the child, like to be able to live, to be able to have the food that is required, and so on. And then, okay, what kind of learning opportunities will the society provide for a child? And is the society actually thinking about the culture of the child in the child's perspective? So all of this is actually looking at the world from the inside perspective of the child and trying to conceive in these four life spheres how this looks like. When I was in the middle of this process, I met Aaron Antonovsky, and we had a dialogue, and actually I followed him for the last 7 years of his life, where we were able to meet many times because he became a honorary professor at our institution, which was the Nordic school, which had students from the 5 Nordic countries. Students who were in a post sort of learning process, but they already had the basic training. It was wonderful years that all of a sudden that we had decided that when I finish my thesis, I will go and meet him at his university in Israel. The unfortunate thing was that he died that summer very suddenly and left this field completely open. When I then decided with my institution that we will pick up this challenge of Aaron Antonovsky and build up learning systems like PhD courses and training courses, and introducing this concept of salutogenesis in all the learning processes at that place. And it was a very good thing to do. We were the first one, actually. It should have been the people in Beersheba that did it, but they were so shocked after Antonovsky's death that they didn't get going. You met Aaron Antonovsky's son earlier, Abishar, who spoke to you earlier in this conference. Okay, the model I had been building was actually looking at the prerequisites for quality of life. How do you build a model which with these 4 dimensions for the quality of life of the child? And how come does Antonovsky's concept come into this? I think it is actually, when you look at health, the driving force of health is the salutogenic model. And as we can see today, the salutogenic model works extremely well in the context of health, and also today, when you can see the outcome measures that the sense of coherence and salutogenesis are key elements in understanding and creating health in the world we live in today. And the utmost aim is to create opportunities for a human being to lead the life they want to live, on the conditions that they are not destructive to others in this society and not destructive to the ecology of society, the whole view of it. I have shown, in fact, the model is very holistic. It contains all the levels we can think about in life, and also the outcome is to be able to live within this society, not being destructive to society, not being destructive to other people, not being destructive to ecology. So it's a sustainable model we are talking about. These are a lot of words, and to understand that as a focus you have the child and the child perspective in this. We thought it would be good not only to use these words and this sort of theoretical concept. You know, in this world, I will never be able to go out in the world and ask a person, how is your sense of coherence today? That doesn't make sense. People wouldn't understand what it's all about. So we are going to give you a practical example of a person I met many, many years ago when she was young. And this story is told when she's 18 years old. And I'm going to comment to the text. We will hear some of the Swedish she's talking, but I'm trying to sort of talk to the video because I expect that all of you do not understand Swedish. Okay, Claudia, would you be able to put this on? Here we are. This is Selena Maria. And she was born with, let's take the sound off for a while. She was born with just one functional leg and no arms, and came as a complete surprise to her family. But what her family decided at that moment was to say, we are going to do all we can do to make her life the best possible life. And that's what they did. So you see her now when she's 18 years old. Come on, let's go on with this. And as you can see here, she can do all the things that are ordinary things in life, with just the one foot. She can wash her face, she can brush her teeth. And she was also saying in the beginning here that actually I don't consider myself disabled because I can do all the things I want to do in life. And on the other hand, all people are disabled because nobody can do everything in life. But I can do what I want to do in life. And this has been provided to me by my family. When I was a small child, I was trying to learn how to walk. And I had a physiotherapist who was working with me for over a year, and we didn't get anywhere until one day I told her, couldn't we do it like this? And then she stood up, and after that she was able to walk completely. As you can see, she is brushing her teeth here. She is actually trying to do all about her own life and not having too many special equipment. Her mother was is an ergotherapist, and Selena Maria says, mother brought me home all these strange things that she wanted me to use, and I said, no, I don't want to use that, because if I do that, I'm going to be locked into a box where I can't move out in society. Can you get the video going again?
Man märker det hur handikappade, det är så olika hur de blir beroende på hur de blir uppfostrade och behandlade utav föräldrar och samhället och sådär. Men ja, jag får seka precis som alla andra barn och lära mig tur och ordning precis som alla andra barn.
She says she has been treated as an ordinary child in society. The society where she is living, it seems the video stops when I start talking. Is that true, or can you let it go? If it can.
Och jag på säkert ett år och försökte. Och sen idag när jag var där så sa jag så här, men kan man inte göra så här? Så det stämmer. Så att och det är också en grej som kommer igen om och om igen. Att mamma hon försöker ofta komma på hur jag ska göra saker, men det blir alltid jag själv som kommer på det till slut ändå.
Of course, now as a teenager, she wants to look and do what all other teenagers do. As a girl, she wants to make herself beautiful and put mascara on and so on. And that is also the right of her to be as other people be, to be as a person in society, not always being reminded that she is supposed to be something. She lives on her own now, and she is in the high school studying music. Her big interest in life, music, and the second big interest was physical exercise. She actually became a Paralympic champion in the Olympics later on in life. This is the year before she was. And here, yes, I want to do, and I want to look, I want to live a life like everybody else, in spite of I'm not having two arms, and I just have one leg that is functional. I want to participate and be part of life. As I said, she didn't want to have help, special things to help herself when she's living in this flat. This is in her kitchen. She wants to do everything by herself. The only thing she has as a help is a high chair so she can move around in the kitchen. And the other thing she has is a sword stick with a hook on. Of course, she says, she's making a sweater here. It would be good to have two hands, and so I could make two sweaters at the same time. But in fact, I myself, I don't want to be anybody else for that. Speaking of help, she has a car which she is able to drive herself, and she said, this gives me the freedom to move about in society and meet my parents and go to the training for swimming and so on. And I find it's very important to be able to have this opportunity. She's leading a complete life, and today she's 50 years old, and she's continuing. She became a big star when it comes to music. She's a vocalist and travels around the world. But here she's traveling in her city and driving her own car. Can we hear the music here, or is it? No, it's not there. I always say, if somebody asks me what is quality of life, it's to be able to drive your own car with your foot and drum the rhythm on the driving wheel. So there we have the end of this story of Selena Maria, who has been living a full life, and much of this was because her parents at the beginning said, we are going to do whatever we can do to make this life complete for our child. And starting this process of deep understanding of her as a person, and trying to really work with her own perspective. And this start point is actually, when we go through life, this starting point is the most important thing, and this is what provides for us to go on in life. We also, thinking about building this kind of model, we thought in the Salutogenic Model of Health, how should you, as a person, deal with persons? What would you have to think of as a professional or as a person in life? And there we say what we want to develop is the sense of coherence of these persons. But then you have to have your skill by yourself to understand the sense for coherence, what you need to be able to do this. And here I would like Claudia to come in and explain the sense for coherence, which is a new concept in this concept. Please, Claudia, you can take over. Thank you.
Thank you, Bengt, and thank you, Dr. Amanda. My name is Claudia Meier Magistretti, and I will now present to you what the sense for coherence could be about. Could be because I would like to start, like Bengt and Amanda, with my story with Arnold Tonovsky, which was a very short one, but maybe an important one when you now listen to this new concept. I was a young professional, just finished my studies, when I went to a conference where somebody called Antonovsky was speaking. I didn't know the name, I didn't know the concept, but I was overwhelmed by what he was saying, and I was so impressed. It was many years ago, of course, and this was completely new. His way of thinking, his way to start with health and to develop health was completely new. So after the presentation, he gave a seminary, and of course I went there. And after the seminary, I approached Professor Antonovsky and asked him, taking all my courage as a young professional together, and asked him, Professor, where can I learn what you teach here? Then he said, don't learn. Take the theory and do further developing on it. And this is how I would like you to listen to the presentation of the new concept of the sense for coherence. Please take it and develop it further, or think, how could this fit into Indian health promotion or international global health promotion? So you have seen the video, thank you, Bengt, again, of Anna Maria, and you have seen what the parents did. They listened to her. And the sense for coherence is also very much about listening to the people we work with. I would like now to share my screen. I hope it works. Just a second. So, yes, it does. Good. Okay. The sense for coherence is a concept that we knew very little of at the beginning. But we were about 6 or 7 universities researching about it and doing empirical work on it. And I'm going to present to you the story from knowing nothing to knowing a bit to knowing a bit more about this sense for coherence. It was Bengt Lindstrom who first introduced the concept and who mentioned it in the Hitchhiker's Guide, saying that the sense for coherence is the ability of to see the inside perspective of the target system, and to have this ability makes it possible for the target group or for the individual we work at to develop a sense of coherence. Or shorter, the sense for coherence, this is from another book Bengt Lindstrom has published. The sense for coherence is the sense of professionals of how to improve the sense of coherence of the people we work for. And you know how crucial the sense of coherence is. And if we succeed in improving, in strengthening it, then we have a big effect on mental health, on spiritual health, and physical health, on societal health, even as we assume nowadays. But, and this was the third time in the third publication where the sense for coherence was mentioned by Bengt Lindstrom. Up to now, we don't know how professionals actually do this. And this we wanted to investigate, and this we wanted to learn about. And we started with a study entitled Setting the Stage for Health. What we did is, it was in a cost action. COST is Cooperation for Science and Technology. It's an EU program for networking and research in new fields. Okay, we did in this cost action a qualitative study in 3 different countries to investigate the knowledge of salutogenic or health-oriented professionals. The tacit knowledge, it's difficult to tell how you ride a bike, but it's easy to show. And there are special techniques of interviewing where you can really reveal what people do without that they have to explain how they do things in their everyday work. This is about tacit knowledge. And we interviewed midwives. Why? First, because the cost action was about midwives, but also because other researchers, Schücking and colleagues, had found that the sense of coherence is very much influenceable, can be influenced very much in the time of giving birth to a child in the families, in the mothers, and in the fathers. So it's important to understand how we can strengthen the sense of coherence at the beginning of a new life, and also for the reasons you just heard from Bengt Lindstrom, because of this mentalization and symbolization processes. And it's therefore important to know how professionals with a salutogenic orientation and the salutogenic practice do this, in order to know how can we do this sense for coherence. We investigated in 3 countries, and this allowed us to cover different healthcare systems, different settings, and different practices. And we developed a 4-step data analysis and clustering method. And we found something that at the time was exciting for us. Now we got used to it. We found that the professionals who really work with a salutogenic practice, they really strengthen the sense of coherence while they address the dimension of the SOC, the comprehensibility, the manageability, and the meaningfulness. And we also found how they do this. I'm going to explain this now, not in detail for every dimension, but in detail for comprehensibility, and then in a more general way for the other 2 dimensions of the sense of coherence. So, sense for coherence means addressing the dimensions of the sense of coherence. And for the example of strengthening comprehensibility, we found this cycle process. Midwives try to understand what the woman they work with wants. And they try to deeply understand. They question again, and they listen to what they say, as the parents listened to Anna Maria, who said, I don't want all this equipment, I want to learn by myself. And they together found a way on how they could do it. They explained to each other how they will proceed in this process. And Anna Maria was listened to. And this is also what the midwives did. They tried to understand and then tried to explain what their understanding could mean to the woman, and what this would mean for giving birth, for example, or having a postnatal period. And then by explaining what it will follow out of the understanding, they provide orientation for the woman. Maybe it's easier if you can see some quotes to understand. So understanding means also to consciously not follow the own value system. Here a quote from one midwife. I got the entry form and I read that he wanted an early PDA. I didn't think, oh God, there is one who wants an early peridural anesthesia. There is always a reason why she wants this. And then I went to ask her just because I was interested. I wanted to understand. So she didn't want to impose a professional practice or a professional opinion to this woman. She wanted to understand. And by the understanding, now it doesn't move now, she could then explain technically the advantages and the disadvantages of what the woman wanted. And the woman had to know what this means exactly in order to be aware of what the midwife will do, what the professionals will do. And so they built up trust and they built up security. And this is a circle process. So understanding starts again, explaining, providing orientation, understanding, explaining, providing orientation. Of course, you cannot do this in a 15-minute setting. You need more time. But this time, you're safe afterwards in a better proceeding of birth and of the whole process. And it's important to give this initial time to really understand the woman. Sorry. Good. The circle of creating comprehensibility leads to security, because the woman feels assured she can trust the surrounding, the midwife, the hospital, wherever she will be. But trusting and comprehending what in her surrounding also leads her to trust into her own power of giving birth, power of having the ability to breastfeed, power of feeling strong as a future or present mother. So one midwife described it this way: it's our task to mobilize the power of the woman and to bring her into contact with her elementary power, to teach her to trust it. So we do not teach people capabilities or faculties or strategies. We teach them to trust their own knowledge, their own power. This is very important in a sense for coherence, because also what follows out of a strong comprehensibility, strong sense of security, and a strong trust in their own power is the manageability. And manageability turned out to be, this was already described by Aaron Antonovsky in the book Unraveling the Mystery of Health. This dimension of manageability was the one that was most afflicted by the surrounding, by the hospital culture, by the hospital organization. And what turned out as a concept in a sense for coherence is that manageability, strengthening manageability, is the midwife's task here in this study. It's other professionals' task as well, of course, to be with the woman, to follow the needs of the woman while she balances and manages the contradiction of a surrounding that is often technical, commercial, economical, in a completely different logic than the logic of a human being or the logic of a mother giving birth. And the sense for coherence means strengthening the manageability of the woman by balancing these influences of different logics, by equilibrating it, and by also holding the contradictions that occur and not giving it further to the woman and the child, complicating maybe even the birth process. So the manageability dimension was described here in a negative sense or in a contradictory sense by a midwife. And she used the example of a heavy day she had. After the third birth that day, she said, I just lacked sensitivity. And then I told her what she had to do. Instead of giving her options to choose, I was directed by my opinions and not open to her wishes. And this is something we observed very much, that it was easier to tell, for the midwives, to tell what they should not do or what they didn't want to do than what they wanted to do in the dimension of manageability. And this, again, mirrors what Antonovsky describes. It's a volatile dimension. It's not this volatile when we come to the dimension of meaningfulness. Meaningfulness was actually a bit simple concept in the sense for coherence. It had two sub-dimensions, if you want to name it them like this. Meaningfulness was the trust either in the innate power of birth in this case, or of wanting to be independent and part of society and part of a group in the video of Anna Maria. So this innate power, I want something and I do it. It makes sense to me. I do not need to explain. This is one way meaningfulness was conceptualized in this study. And the other way was when women had a specific task or a specific aim. For example, they wanted a water birth, or for example, Anna Maria wanted to become a singer or a good swimmer. So then she has an additional task to that is meaningful for her and which is motivating the whole process. When we put all these elements together, then we have the whole picture of the sense for coherence. Professionals who work in this logic strengthen comprehensibility in this cyclic process I described, which leads to the feeling of security and a feeling of empowerment in the target group or in the person we work with, which allows the person to manage situation and to be motivated to do certain things in a situation. And what we found in our study, the result of all these processes is mastery. Mastery, maybe a big word. It's not really a mastery, but what happened is that the more trust, the more security the women had, the easier the birth was, because they managed easier. They were motivated because the birth process went well, and motivation, of course, led again to an easier management. And all this was accompanied by very low pain, subjectively felt birth pain. So this could be the sense for coherence. Now, people could say, okay, let's make step trainings for the sense for coherence. This might not work. I'm quite sure it doesn't work, because it's a deeper process. It's not just a strategy of counseling or a strategy for intervention you can learn. We tried to show this, and we did not only interview people, or we did not only observe sessions. We also went to hospitals who do not have always a really health-oriented birth practice, but a very technical birth practice. And we found that there is actually a difference between a salutogenic practice and a risk avoidance practice, how we call it. And the difference looks like this. It looks, this is the sense for coherence, and this is what in usual hospital sessions happens. The midwife or the obstetrician gives information to the woman. The woman is maybe not motivated. She is afraid of something. Let's take the example of a risk of diabetes in pregnancy. So the woman gets the information, receives the information. You should keep your diet because when you're at risk to develop this diabetes. And the woman said, no, I can't. I'm not able to keep a diet. I tried it so many times. Okay, then the obstetrician, the midwife, tries to motivate her to reduce fear. And if this does not lead to action, she takes more expertise. So she sends the woman to specific counseling for diet in pregnancy or something. But you see, it's only a cognitive approach. It's not deepening into empowerment or security, and it does not lead to meaningfulness and to manageability. And what we then did, because it's difficult to convince a medical system with qualitative data only. What we then did, we tried to measure the different ways of counseling. And for this, we used thermal imaging. We did 4 photos during a half-an-hour process of counseling, and we could see the change of temperature in the face and in the hands of the counseling person. Why does this tell us something? Because we can, and we described this in a paper called The Face of Salutogenesis some years ago, we can depict emotions or guess emotions by different areas of the face that warm up or cool down in certain emotional states, like empathy, like stress, like anxiety. And I just show you to illustrate how we found different processes in the 2 ways of consulting. The results of the clinical practice are here. You can see the warmer an area is, the redder it is, and the colder, the bluer. And we have a different pattern in the salutogenic practice. This is a bit difficult to understand. It's easier to see it in the absolute temperature graphs. And what you see is that in the clinical practice, you have a starting point, and then something happens in the middle of the consultation where there's some engagement, the temperature rises, but at the end, it's at the same point where it has been at the beginning. To the contrary, the consultant in the salutogenic practice changes her or his temperature it goes up, which means there's more emotional engagement in it, and it doesn't lower at the end. Maybe you have heard about that counseling or working with people changes both sides, the professionals and the target systems or the target person they work with. And this is what happens when you really practice the sense for coherence. I would like to end now with an example from early childhood, because I would like to close the circle also where Bengt started our presentation. This is an example of a little girl in a daycare center who always started to shout and to scream and to throw things around when they wanted to go out to the playing ground. And discipline didn't help, punishment didn't help. There was one woman who was in training for the sense for coherence there in one of our studies, and she tried to understand the situation, and just thinking of the 3 dimensions. Does the child understand what it has to do? Is it able to do what she is accepted to do? She is expected to do? And does she want to do it? She realized she did all this dramatic theatralic scenery because she wanted to hide that she was not able to launch her shoes, to really close them, because it was too complicated for her. And all she needed was to learn how to close the shoes properly, and the whole scenery was calm. So it's not a complicated concept, the sense for coherence. Actually, it can be very, very easy once we have understood it, not only intellectually, but also with our hearts and our bodies. And this is where I would like to end, and thank you for the attention, and open the mic to the discussion now.
Thank you so much, Professor Claudia, for that beautiful presentation and for enlightening us on this concept of sense for coherence. And I really thank Professor Bengt for giving this concept, because sense of coherence, now sense for coherence. And you have seeded a seed in our consciousness to now see how here in an Indian perspective with yoga therapy, music therapy, how we can start to work on this. And I was telling my colleague, Dr. Meena, this has to now be understood from that angle. So I really thank you for this presentation. We open to any comments or questions from our participants for a few minutes. I think you should be able to unmute yourself if you want to ask any question, or you could also type it in the chat box. Ramareddy sir, would you like to say a few words? Professor Ramareddy is one of India's top psychiatrists who's currently doing a PhD in yoga therapy with us.
Thank you, sir. Namaste. I was having a misconception about salutogenesis that it deals with only health promotion and a little prevention part. Last week itself, that they got dispelled, and this time it got consolidated once again that even it includes up to the level of rehabilitation, and it is the whole encompassing. And also, as you are pointing out, that all for really wonderful exposition of the subject. Thank you very much, both the speakers.
Thank you.
Professor Ingunn, would you like to make any comments?
Yes, thank you for two wonderful presentations. I want to say hello to my former colleague, Bengt Lindstrom, who was at my university. I have met him only once. I don't even know if you remember, but
yes,
my colleague and I, Usha Nair, asked you about a yoga project.
Mm-hmm.
And ask you about salutogenetic theory and potential. I really appreciate your video and to see how this girl, when taken seriously, what was important to her, could really be so empowered in her life. And also this notion of sense for coherence. It was wonderful to see the difference in how these health professionals really were so deeply in contact with the women that they were supposed to help to give birth, that they really made a difference on all levels. And especially this, listening, really deeply listening and try to connect emotionally with them. It made such a difference in the way they were empowered. So thank you very much for sharing this. It was really enlightening, both of you.
Thank you.
I was having a question for many years now, ever since we came to know of sense of coherence. Can it be changed much? Because I believe in the initial days, it was considered a fixed quality like genetics. But now we know genetics can also be changed, epigenetics. Mm-hmm. So I was just wondering, how much can it be changed, and are there any specific places where you can change it in the, life course?
Oh, which one would like to answer this question? It is dynamic. It's actually, when you look at it in a life perspective, it's actually the mean values are increasing over life. So actually you have the highest values when you are the oldest. You have the greatest experience of life at the end of your life. And this means that you have openness. And there are, of course, situations when you are challenged as a person, when you open up, and we are not open to change your sense of coherence. So these points are here. For instance, giving birth to a child is certainly a position where you change so much in your life, both physically, mentally, spiritually, and socially, that this is a point where you, in fact, are open to changes. You're vulnerable and you're open to it. And many other sort of situations where life where you actually realize, I'm in my life and what can I do about this life? Claudia, would you like to comment on this? Or?
Thank you. You've said the whole theory already, so I add some empirical things maybe, that we know about birth. There we have data. It's more difficult to know about other periods in life. For example, we know that when you have a severe shock or a severe diagnosis, that temporarily the sense of coherence goes down, or that when you measure it, or it's weakened, but it sort of recovers. And this recovery process is not yet fully researched. It's in Europe, it's Dr. Petzold who works on this and other people. And I would really like to know from the Indian perspective, from a yoga perspective, from a more holistic perspective, what your theory would be. Where do we have these changes? We also know we can improve, or we can strengthen the sense of coherence by certain meaningful resources we provide. We tend to just think of provide resources. No, what makes a change are the meaningful resources. Then people use it and can strengthen their sense of coherence. And this is Rucha Mas, who in the Northern University, where you are, Ingunn, researches on this. And this is a very promising part of research also. But there is still a lot to be known. And it is of course, changeable. We can also measure it, this, as Bengt said.
Thank you so much, Professor Claudia, for that explanation. And we are looking forward to bringing forth some yogic perspectives in the future. I think we have Dr. Sangeeta Laura Biaggi from Italy with us. Yes, Sangeeta.
Namaste, buongiorno, and greetings, everyone. Thank you. It's delightful to be here and be learning with you. And I feel really moved, actually, that some of my teachers, acharyas, actually are here in this room. So Dr. Nanda Balayogi Bhavanani is my yoga acharya. And then, you two, Professor Lindstrom and Magistretti, who represent the lineage of the Salutogenesis and Antonovsky. So one of the aspects of this wonderful question, sir, that you raised, which I witnessed, is that in the yoga perspective, there is this element of spiritual strength and spiritual wellness that has come to the forefront of the World Health Organization as well in recent years, which wasn't there at first. And I think what my experience as an Italian, of course, in learning yoga over the last few decades, is that this concept of an anchor, what in coaching is called the anchor, a spiritual anchor, something that grounds you but also inspires you no matter what, is a great contribution of yoga, which perhaps was missing in my life before. It was a more individualistic approach where I am going to manage, I am going to understand. So all of this concept of salutogenesis were about me and my capacity to stand up and understand and manage and all. But with the spiritual element that can come in through yoga, which is not a religion, of course it's rooted in a religion, but it's not necessarily religious in that way. it's accessible to all, from all religions and atheists as well. That is the capacity to lift ourselves because we feel we're part of something greater, that we're not alone. And so one of the risks in the dropping of the sense of coherence when facing a trauma or a risk is the sense of isolation. And isolation is, of course, terrible in trauma, in stress, in disease. And if I may ask, actually, it could be one of the reasons why the sense of coherence may be dampened. This feeling of not belonging to something greater or not to be part of something healthier and greater. So I think that perhaps that could be a conversation that could be developed, the sense of spiritual health in the sense of coherence, and also, does spirituality impact the developmental sense for coherence? Are people who are on a spiritual path, meaning that they feel connected to something greater, have a better chance to developing the sense for coherence and not lose it as much as people who are more based on the individual sense of coherence? Thank you.
Thank you, Sangeeta, for that sharing. I believe both Professor Ingunn and Professor Claudia have their hands up. So I let you take over.
Yes, I wasn't sure if they wanted to respond to Sangeeta's question first.
Just shortly, if I gave the impression that the sense for coherence or the sense of coherence is an individual capacity, then this was absolutely wrong. It's an interactional concept. It's always interaction with our surrounding, with resources. Spiritual resources are more important than, of course, we thought. And we, in Europe especially, but this has nothing to do with the theory of salutogenesis, where you have included the spiritual dimension from the beginning. Just this is a very important thing to say. It's not a capacity.
And then maybe Bengt wanted to answer first.
No, I think also the way we try to present here, we were talking about mentalization of the process between people. And I think the really exciting thing that comes now that we actually can go into this sort of collective understanding of sense of coherence, not the individual. And we are having results of this, and we're actually hoping we will have a good broad European project on this in a few months' time, which will give us the opportunity to work on this for a long time. Thank you.
Okay, I realized that I didn't get the chance to ask the question I had, which was not quite formulated, but I get the impression from your demonstrations that there is this very respectful attitude towards other people and what is meaningful to them, both from you as a researcher trying to understand people and also when looking at health professionals using this sense for coherence approach. Is this something you feel is specific to salutogenesis?
Well, I think this is something you have to add to salutogenesis as a dimension, that the respect for people and what we are actually working with. What is the character of the kind of dialogue you want to create between people? And this is actually what are the sort of key values of this, and this is the central part of the project that we are going on. We are going to start to work with, and if not, we are doing it anyway. How does it look like? How does this respectful dialogue look? And what are the dimensions of it? And this was a perspective we started to discuss only 1.5 years ago. Mm-hmm. Maybe Claudia wants to expand on that, because you have been essential to this sort of.
Thank you for the opportunity, but I would like to listen to other comments and unless you want me to explain more.
Now,
Hello.
basically, yeah, yes, I have to leave very shortly, but so if I disappear, it's not because I become a spiritual being, but I have to leave.
Hello, sir.
Yes.
Yeah, I have one question.
Yes.
First of all, it is a wonderful session that actually we are learning a life's perspective. So this is, I mean, very naturally, this question is coming to me, being a psychologist, that is there any specific time or the age that from when actually this sense of coherent, it starts to develop in children?
Shall I answer? We believe it starts before you are born. We believe this is, I've written a short paper on the genesis of salutogenesis, and the interaction already intrauterine is there. And in fact, if you want to still speak about epigenetics, it's even before, you know, you are conceived as a human being. So it's a very early. And if you can catch up on this and go on, like for instance, the parents of Selena Maria, who immediately when they saw her with her physical disability said, we want to do the best for you. And if everybody would have this kind of thought in the mind, we want to do the best for the people around us and the people we are responsible for, we would change this thing. And I really think this kind of sort of thought and dialogue can be, and I'm sure yoga is one way of doing it, but I'm not sure you can do yoga with unborn children, but you can do it with the mother. Maybe that's the way you can start doing this kind of thinking. I don't know.
Actually, we have in Indian culture various practices that are done when the mother is pregnant to facilitate the intrauterine development physically, mentally, emotionally, and spiritually for the child. So I think there's a very beautiful connection there. And this is another seed that I think will go a long way when it flowers and manifests. I would like to take this opportunity. Yes, Mike.
So, namaste all. Sorry.
1 second. Yeah.
Yes. So, like like when sir was saying, just came to my mind what we focus on usually as Garbha Sanskar, where even during while they are planning for pregnancy. So the whole thing starts even at that time, and how, like this can influence the genetics and epigenetics of the baby, and how, so it makes sense now. The pointers that you have been giving along with all this, because this is a concept that we have being often when we talk to those people. So it should have started earlier. So what you are saying is really makes sense. Thank you so much for this is so beautiful that we are trying to connect all the dots together now to make a clearer picture. So thanks again. Thank you so much.
Thank you so very much. We are planning the next edition of the handbook, the International Handbook. And I'm sure Bengt agrees. We would be very glad to have a chapter from your center with all the beautiful thoughts you now just could shortly mention and develop them. This would be great.
I agree, and now I actually have to leave. We are a bit late already. And thank you very much, all of you. Thank you for the host, and also thank you for Claudia to be able to come in very late in this session. I think it completed the perspective I wanted to have in it. Thank you very much, Dawn.
Thank you so
Thank
much.
you. Thank you.
Thank you from my part also for the invitation and for the
Such a
conversation.
pleasure. And
I
we
hope
hope to have you with us often in the future.
Goodbye.
Continuing with our webinar, we are now coming into our second session for the day. And we have with us our most beloved Professor Ingunn Hagen. And for all of you in the ISCM family, she is a familiar face in most of our events. She has been with us here physically at the Institute. And personally, I consider her a very, very close being in my life. And she has manifested a beautiful understanding document for us with the university where she is working as professor in psychology at the NTNU in Norway. Her research interests include yoga, mental health, well-being, media mastery, role of digital media in children and young people's lives, internet-related risks, the audience reception studies, political communication, children, consumption, and she has led different projects on people's experiences related to yoga. The Hippocampus project is a very important one in that regard. She has presented at numerous international yoga events and published in international journals, has been a long-term yoga practitioner, and in recent times has become an integral part of our Gitananda yoga tradition. Her teaching expertise include media audiences, media and communication, psychology, organizational communication, qualitative methodologies, mindfulness, coaching, existential psychological approaches to conversations in life and work life. She has published extensively and been active in numerous international and national organizations related to media and communication. More than all of that, a very dignified, wise human being. Someone whose wisdom I value personally. So welcoming you, Professor Ingunn, for your talk today on positive psychology and salutogenesis.
Thank you. I could need a little bit help to get my PowerPoint going.
Would you like me to put it from here?
If that's possible.
Yeah, just give me a moment. I have downloaded it. I hope it's coming up on the screen now.
Yes, it is.
Perfect.
Will I be able to move it, or would you be?
You may have to just say next, or you may have to put your hand up or something.
Okay,
Say.
I will do that. Okay. So thank you very much for this opportunity to speak. I must admit that I'm not an expert on salutogenesis like the former speakers, especially Bengt Lindstrom, who has been so long in the field. So I have approached salutogenesis before because I saw it as a very interesting approach to understand, especially the yoga projects like that we were doing, especially the Hippocampus project, where we did an intervention in school in order to promote mental health among young people. But this talk gave me a chance to go deeper into salutogenesis and also draw some parallels with positive psychology. Next. So this is what I'm going to talk about. First, a little bit about positive psychology, where I will focus mostly on happiness from a psychological perspective. And then salutogenesis, where the focus is very much on health and health promotion and meaningful factors. And then I will talk about a community-wide health promotion project, which is, of course, applying these concepts in a health promotion campaign. Next. So when it comes to positive psychology and to salutogenesis, one of the issues is that whether we are looking at some two paradigmatic changes, one in the discipline of psychology, of course, where the positive psychology is emphasizing the positive aspects of human life, and then one in the field of health promotion with the salutogenesis genetic perspective, if that's a paradigm shift. And you're probably very familiar with the notion of paradigm, which is referring to a fundamental change in underlying assumptions of a scientific discipline or field of research. And it was coined by Thomas Kuhn in his book, The Structure of Scientific Revolutions. And I remember the first time when I was, this book was made known to me. It was when I was a young student in communication in California. And I think for the first time, it made me realize that you're socialized within an academic field or tradition, and there's a lot of things you take for granted. And one of the things that comes up with this notion of paradigm is that these are just thought patterns, assumptions, and theories that you have learned, and you've also learned what is legitimate methods, like in the field of psychology, the survey and experiment are very dominant, and it's very new that qualitative methods are legitimate. And also standards for what is legitimate contributions to a field. So it's like you have this academic worldview that then someone comes up and changes. So that's a paradigm shift. Next. Positive psychology. I'm also not considering myself someone who is working within that tradition, but I have been writing about it because I find it an interesting new development in psychology. It's Martin Seligman who is given the credit for coining the concept and laying the foundations for this perspective in psychology. Because the focus of psychology has traditionally been on curing mental illness. So, and it also has rather a concept of human beings as rather passive victims of circumstances. So in an earlier version of this handbook of positive psychology, Seligman wrote in an introduction that practitioners went about treating mental illness within the disease patient framework of repairing damage. So this is what he wanted to change. Like in salutogenesis, you have these huge handbooks that are showing where the field stands today. And this handbook that I have a picture of, the Oxford Handbook of Positive Psychology, which is a further development of these handbooks of positive psychology. It's also a huge book, even larger than the handbook of Salutogenesis. It has 792 pages and 68 chapters. And the two first editors at that point in 2021 was dead. So the book starts with, paying some tribute to these editors who were central in the first books, but were already dead in 2021. Next. And this article that Seligman wrote in the 2002 version of the Handbook of Positive Psychology, he tells a story that he has told in many other settings and books too, about an incident with his 5-year-old daughter, Nikki, and they were removing weed from the garden. And this incident gave him became an aha moment for him, because he was the kind of person that he wanted to get the job done. He had a limited time, and he had his 5-year-old daughter with him to help him, and she was just playing around, throwing the weeds, singing, having fun. And the father was kind of grumpy because he didn't get the help he expected from his daughter. So she was saying, "Father, I have been able to overcome my weaning that I was accused of as a child, but you have to overcome your grumpiness when you do things." And this was, accusing her father, but he really had to stop and say, why am I this grumpy in this kind of situation, which could have been very nice? And that made him think also beyond his own person on the field, because he was just about to take over as the leader or chairman of the American Psychological Association. And so he took this forward in this, when they had their convention or meeting in San Francisco in 1988. And that's when he said that in my period as a leader in this organization, we are going to change direction. And the change in direction was positive psychology. So the aim was to find us to catalyze a change in psychology from repairing the worst things in life to also building the best qualities in life. So it was a huge change in psychology, bringing the building of human strength to the forefront, rather than just focusing on treating and preventing mental illness. So this was in the former book of Handbook of Positive Psychology. I have focused quite a bit on Seligman, as he is given much credit for laying the foundations, but in the newer handbook, he is not an author, and there you see the wide variety of what positive psychology is today. But some of his books have been quite influential, Seligman's books, and they're also translated into many languages, including Norwegian. So this Authentic Happiness book, so he is defining it as, it came in 2002, that happiness should be analyzed from 3 different elements: positive emotion, engagement, and meaning. And he was trying to kind of deconstruct or operationalize happiness because he wanted to measure it, he wanted to study it. And there is also in this new positive psychology, and especially in some of the books of Seligman, you see a strong influence from humanistic psychology, which is a lot about, for example, Maslow and Rogers, where realize your potential or fulfillment as a human being are central. Next, thank you. Seligman's books got a lot of attention, but he was continuing to work on his especially understanding of happiness. And he felt the need to refine it even more. And in his 2011 books, he called it flourishing as a human being, where well-being is also central. So, and he defines flourishing as to find fulfillment in our life, accomplishing meaningful and worthwhile tasks and connecting with others at a deeper level, which is, he thinks, is essential for a good life. Here he contributed with a new term, PERMA, which is an abbreviation for positive emotions, engagements, relationships, meaning, and achievements, which he finds these 5 elements are very central to human well-being and to flourishing. So he's extending the notion of happiness, which was so central in his 2002 book, and by including well-being and the PERMA model. Next, please. He has done a lot of work in this field, and one of the books that he wrote with a colleague, Christopher Peterson, is called The Character, Strengths, and Virtues, because these are the positive sides of human beings that they chose to look at. And they did a study of what these strengths and virtues, how they are defined in different cultures. So they did a lot of groundwork for this book. And some notions or virtues are mentioned in many cultures, and they are wisdom, courage, humanity, justice, temperance or moderation, and then transcendence. So these are important virtues. And this was attempted to be a positive alternative to the DSM, which is like a Bible of psychologists. It's the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual for Mental Disorders. It's an American classification system. There's also the ICD, which also has different numbers, which is the European version. But the DSM system, I believe they now have come to 9. It's revised quite often. It's used very much for clinical work, and it's also used a lot for research work. Next. So it is debated, and I'm not clear myself whether positive psychology should be regarded as a movement or a new paradigm, according to the definition of what a paradigm is. But at least, as you could see in the Oxford Handbook of Positive Psychology, it's a very flourishing movement or tradition, and the founding father, Dr. Seligman, is still going strong. He is in his 80s now, and still going strong, teaching, doing research. So it's and it has influenced mainstream psychology also in many ways, that people see more towards the positive dimensions of human life, much more than before. Next. Then to the Salutogenic Model, which is in focus in this seminar series. Much of what I say is based on this article, The Salutogenic Model as a Theory to Guide Health Promotion, which was published in 1996, 2 years after Antonovsky was dead. It's a very clear and well-written article, so I really recommend it. So he is arguing in that article that the salutogenic perspective orientation is a more fruitful and viable paradigm for health promotion research and practice. And he was a medical sociologist, Antonovsky, but this was his one of the fields he was working a lot on, health promotion. And he was very positive towards this field of research, which he thought was a very important addition. He even talks about it as a revolution when it was introduced, because it was facilitating health much more than preventing disease. Next, please. Like probably some of you, I've also become a member of this STARS network. And not only is the handbook available, but also some of Antonovsky's books, like this book from 1979. And in the 96 article, Antonovsky expresses that he felt that health promotion was in danger of stagnation because he said that they needed a theory to guide them. So his ambition was to formulate a theory to guide the thinking and research in this health promotion field. So already in 1979, he has started to say that we need to focus on the origins of health, which I think is more of a paradigmatic shift than the positive psychology one. And he defines this sense of coherence that you have already all been acquainted with as a framework, as a useful theory for taking the salutogenetic approach to health promotion. Next, thank you. Some of the basic assumptions of salutogenesis is that health and disease exist on a continuum rather than being a dichotomous classification. And this is quite significant. So the focus is on salutary factors that are actively contributing to health, rather than focus on factors that lower risk. But the implications of this continuing being the basis is that health promotion is not only aimed at those who are sick or diseased, it's aimed at everyone. Because as some examples were described in the handbook, even a person with cancer can have a much better life. And so regardless of whether you're healthy or diseased, you can improve your life and you can strengthen these salutary factors. And as we saw in the talks that we already heard today, the health promoter plays a very important role in the process, especially with this notion of sense for coherence. So the salutogenic orientation is about how can this person be helped to move towards greater health. And as in yoga, the focus is on all aspects of the person. It's a very holistic notion of people. Antonovsky also described what he called generalized resistance resources, what resources a person has to deal with challenges. He also speaks about specific resistance resources, but it's especially the generalized resistance resources, which have one common factor, that it helps a person to see the world as making sense. So, and he also talks about how developing these generalized resistance resources presuppose consistency, participation in shaping the outcome of one's life in making decisions, and also that there is a balance in underload and overload in people's lives experience that is helping these generalized resistance resources. And these generalized resistance resources is the basis for this sense of coherence concept or construct, where people are known to perceive the world as meaningful, something that motivates them. They see the world as comprehensible, and the challenges that they face are understood. And it's also manageable in the sense that they feel that they have within themselves or in their surroundings the resources for coping. Next, please. So this sense of coherence, which has become very central in this salutogenetic way of thinking, it resembles a lot of other concepts, especially in psychology, like coping, optimism, self-efficacy. But Antonovsky is aware of these similarities. He's addressing the coping literature a lot when claiming that his concept is unique. And he says that it's the particular combination of cognitive, behavioral, and motivational factors that is unique to this concept. So the assumption is that this sense of coherence is a theoretical basis for health promotion, and that strengthening this sense of coherence will move people towards better health, regardless of where they are on the continuum of disease health. And as you will see in the handbook, the Salutogenic model and the sense of coherence can be applied to many fields of healthcare, but he says, Antonovsky, that it is especially appropriate for health promotion. Next. And it's always very good to look at the original descriptions that people have, because there have been so many people now, like in the handbook, interpreting Antonovsky. So I looked a little bit at his book from 1987 called Unraveling the Mystery of Health, How People Manage Stress and Stay Well, where he says that the sense of coherence is a global orientation that expresses the extent to which one has a persuasive, enduring, the dynamic feeling of confidence. And this relates to both stimuli deriving from internally and externally in the course of living, are structured, predictable, and explicable. And the resources are available to meet these demands posed by these stimuli. And also these demands or challenges are worthy of investment and engagement. They're meaningful. And he says that this is a re-emphasis compared to his definition of SOC in the 1979 book. He says there's more, that was too cognitive, he felt. So he developed more emphasis on feelings and feelings of confidence. Next, please. But salutogenesis today, and I'm probably you probably all have had a look at this handbook edited by Middlemark and many others. And it's the second edition. It was already in the first one was in 2017, and it's more than 600 pages. It has 57 chapters and 88 authors. So it's a massive book. The good thing about it, I think, is that it's open access. So it's freely available to people. Middlemark, who is a professor of health promotion at the University of Bergen. He's an American, but he has worked in Bergen for many years. He is saying that why should we care about salutogenesis? And he says, some of the central questions are, how may we better understand the origins of human health, and how may we advance health in a manner considerate to the connected of the health of life in generally. So you have to relate health to human life. And as I become a member of STARS, I'm sure many of you have too, because this is the Society for Theory and Research in Salutogenesis. And it's a few years already, but it was developed based on a working group of salutogenesis where Bengt Lindstrom was very central. And it was part of this International Union for Health Promotion and Education. This notion of sense of coherence is very central. And it's central to develop a strong sense of coherence. This is what Antonovsky is arguing. So the wish to be or be motivated to cope is about meaningfulness, and it's very motivational. And then believe that the challenge is understood is about comprehensibility. And manageability that were talked about in the former talks today is about believing that you have the resources to cope, whether you are a woman being assisted by midwives or in another life situation. This sense of coherence has been so central that some people in the field have started to call it a sense of coherency theory. Mittelmark is saying that. So, and salutogenesis is something used in more general sense as an approach to health theory and research and practice, where the emphasis is on the resources people draw upon to improve their health. So it's a very focus, as the two other speakers also talked about today. It's a very empowering understanding of health. When Dr. Ananda had made the title for me, he also had included community-wide mental health promotion. And I didn't really understand what he wanted me to talk about until I realized that there was a chapter in the handbook about this. So I decided to focus on that. And this is a health promotion campaign. And they're very honestly saying that they were not informed about salutogenesis or the sense of coherence when they started the campaign. So they developed the campaign without this knowledge, but when they became aware of salutogenesis and the sense of coherence, during their work with the campaign, they included it and found it useful. But this community-wide mental health promotion is called the ABC, or the Act, Belong, Commit, is how this mental health promotion is defined. So to keep active, do something, to belong, to do something with someone, like in friendships, social groups, community events, and to commit, to do something meaningful, to set goals, engage in meaningful activities. So this was how the approach of this health promotion project. Next, please. So in this article, which you can read about in the handbook, these authors, Khorshid and Donovan, they compare this Act, Belong, Commit approach as responding to Antonovsky's call for systematic development of programs that strengthen the sense of coherence, even if this was not the starting point. So they then believe that this campaign will strengthen people's view of the world as comprehensible, manageable, and meaningful. So it's very in line with salutogenesis and the SOC. So this ABC is what you could call a community-based social marketing approach, where they encourage people to engage in mentally healthy behaviors and also partner with local organizations that provide a supportive environment for good mental health. And I will be more concrete in the next slides. Next, please. So this was a campaign that started in Western Australia in the early 2000s. And they were interested in the question, what makes people mentally healthy? And they did a qualitative study where they interviewed laypersons about what they thought made people mentally healthy. And they compared that to a scientific perspective. And they found that the notion of coping capacity was very central. And this campaign, it was quite successful in Western Australia. It was 80% of the adult population was exposed to it, and 10-15% of those aware of the campaign started to take actions to improve their health. And the campaign is also seen to reduce stigma against mental health and increase general openness. And it was generally changing the way people thought about mental health. So it gave people an understanding that mental illness is not just happening to you. You can be proactive and enhance your mental health, because a lot of times we think mental health is something for those who are mentally ill. The rest of us don't have a mental health, but we all have a mental health. So this is the link to the Australian project. Next. This health campaign has been spread to many countries, and one of them was Denmark. And Kushi, I believe, is the Danish contributor. She's one of the authors. So in Denmark, they started in 2014, and they had to rename the campaign to make it more understandable for Danish. So they called it the ABC for mental sundhed. Sundhed is the Danish word for mental health. And like in Australia, also health personnel are involved in this campaign. And I must say that I didn't really understand what that meant until the former talk, especially of Claudia, where this notion of sense for coherence for health personnel really changed the way of working. So again, we have these ABC messages that are taken up in Denmark to do something with someone, and to do something meaningful. So this Danish health campaign is located at the Department of Psychology in the University of Copenhagen, but it has a lot of national partners, as much as 50 now, and it's communities, cities, organizations like Danish Scouts, and many other organizations. And they received a public health promotion prize last year. So it has been very successful in Denmark too. I wanted to just show you some of the strategies, because one interesting, and this is from the original Australian campaign, where they give laymen credit for understanding factors that contributing to good mental health by referring to Nana, Granddad, and Aunt Sally, who could say something, had already these ideas about how to be active, how to belong, and how to commit to meaningful causes. Next, please. You can have a look at those figures in the article that I referred to. It's also a lot about creating awareness among people. Because when you understand what it means to be mentally healthy, when you understand what makes you happy and understand well-being, then it's much easier to act upon it. And this feeling blue, they said that that was the Australian notion for being depressed. So, and they talk about how then if you go out in nature, that will help you. But this creating awareness has a lot in common with yoga, I think, where especially Dr. Gitananda talks about yoga as becoming aware of your body, mind, emotions, and developing a kind of meta-cognitive awareness. Next, please. So positive and psychology and salutogenesis. There is even an article in the handbook that talks about this, where they explore what they call a potential salutogenic positive psychology. This is not really something that exists, but a potential that they see. And they talk about post-traumatic growth as a potential illustration of that. I think that salutogenesis is a new paradigm because it's emphasizing the whole health ease and disease continuing. And they pay attention to factors that make people healthier, like SOC. And there's also a very strong focus on different kinds of context. So it's a very context-based or focused approach. Positive psychology, it's debated in the field whether this is a perspective or a field of research or if it's a paradigm. I think it's more of a perspective or field of research, not fully a paradigm, because the shift from mainstream psychology is not that great. And I think when you compare it to salutogenesis, they are viewing disease health more as a dichotomy rather than a continuum. So it's more a shift in emphasis towards positive psychological constructs like happiness, hope, optimism, gratitude, well-being. And as is common in psychology, except for perhaps community psychology, there's much less attention to social context. Next, please. This ABC and community-wide mental health promotion, some concluding remarks about that too. I think it's a campaign that's doing something very smart and worthwhile, combining lay people's wisdom and scientific insights about factors that promote good health. And in this process, I also discovered that this campaign had arrived in Norway, and they are, I think also the way that they make people partner with organizations and communities is very fruitful, and the way it's health personnel is also included. So I also discovered that in my local region, there is a specific aspect of this ABC campaign. It's called Hodet bra, and it means head well. So it's a way of showing that health is not only about physical health, but it includes your head. So I think that this campaign that started out without the insights of salutogenesis and the SOC theory, this perspective has really strengthened and contributed to the continuation of this work on Act, Belong, Commit. Next, please. I just wanted to say some final remarks that is connecting back to yoga, which of course is one of the pillars of this yoga therapy as the pillars of your institute. I probably could say something related to music therapy too, but that is not so known to me, that field. So Dr. Gitananda, as you know, says that health and happiness are your birthrights, but you have to claim them. And since salutogenesis is coming so central to this institute, I think there is a great potential for cross-fertilization because Antonevsky is encouraging people who do work with this model, who involve in health campaigns or use the sense of coherence or salutogenic perspective, to also take the theory further. And I think that yoga, yogic wisdom, yoga as a way of life, as a therapeutic tool, could bring a lot back to a salutogenic perspective and the sense of coherence. And the same goes for yoga and positive psychology, and also this community-wide mental health promotion. Yoga can in itself be a campaign, a community-wide mental health promotion campaign. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Professor Ingunn, for that amazing presentation and to give us the perspective of the positive psychology and how salutogenesis and positive psychology can be compared, and at the same time, you know, the difference between an application as opposed to a paradigm. I think, you know, this was very well thought out. And also the one in the community, we had wanted that because, you know, so much of work is being done in the community here at the ISCM, both in yoga therapy and music therapy, that we would like to have this ABC become part of, you know, ABC, but through yoga therapy, music therapy be strengthened. So we are looking at diverse dimensions, and you have really added to our wisdom today. I would open for any questions or comments from our audience. We have about 10 minutes for that.
May I speak, sir?
Yes, sir. Please, sir.
Namaste, madam. Thank you very much for this beautiful teaching. You are a great teacher. You know the concepts of teaching, like starting from simple to complex, starting from concrete to abstract, and starting from known things to unknown things. And really, we enjoyed every bit of your lecture.
Thank you.
From my side, I have to express one thing, whether our audience will accept it or not. We haven't got the aha experience yet in salutogenesis concept. See, our professor Bhavnani sir or Meena madam, they already got immersed in the field. So whatever they listen from the scholars, they get the aha experience. But we in the West, ignorant people like me, haven't received that gestalt experience of aha, like we are still chimpanzees groping in the dark, like. So I think we require teachers of your sort so that we can climb higher. Another thing is, in India or anywhere in the world, everybody is considered to be sane unless otherwise proved. So everybody has got mental health, as you say, and only thing is they have to uncover or reveal that. And another thing is, I like this particular definition of mental illness. When somebody feels not comfortable with himself, or when the society around do not feel comfortable with that individual, he is mentally sick. Otherwise, he is mentally normal. So it covers both neurotic things and psychotic things also. So I think that is the practical definition I think we can apply in the community. And another thing is just adding to what you said, DSM has got to 5th edition level, and ICD has got to 11th edition level. Thank you, madam.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, sir, for sharing. Yes. Yes, please.
I just thank you, Rama Reddy. Of course, I value your opinion because you are an expert in this field of working with mental illness. And I think it's also important to realize when you look at the history of mental illness, you see that it's very this interaction between society and the individual, because what is regarded mentally ill in some periods is considered normal in another period. So these are very, there are constructions, but and we all are on the continuum, and we are all having some mentally illness dispositions. So, but we are the lucky ones that we have not been towards the negative end yet.
May I add, sir? What she said is really right, because whenever we define a delusion or hallucination in the tribal areas, for example, in the forest, all the people there believe that that particular tree is a demon or particular tree is God also. So we don't call them as psychotics also, we don't call them as having delusion. It depends upon the culture things. Even in the new Mental Health Act also, considering the political indifferences or eccentricities or religious eccentricities, don't call them mentally ill. So that is the guideline. Previously, this particular thing was misused in Russia, saying that whoever talks something against the government must be having some mental illness, must be having some delusion, and on that with that pretext, they were keeping behind the bars. So whatever she said is it is dynamic, and it is the interaction between the society and the individual which determines the status. Thank you, madam.
Thank you, ma'am. It's a beautiful session. There's just this one slide that you spoke about that the SOC resembles the concepts of coping, optimism, and self-efficacy. But what I understood is that Antonovsky differs, or he has a different opinion. So what do you feel? Is it part of the sense of coherence, or how does it fit in there?
No, there is some resemblance in these concepts with the sense of coherence. So that's why he spent time trying to distinguish his notion of sense of coherence from those existing concepts in the field, especially coping. So for him, it was just a starting point, but there are some similarities depending on how coping skills are defined. It doesn't make the concept less valuable. It's just interesting to see that when we define some concept, it will have some similarity with other concepts, and this is what makes it different. I think that's valuable to have that discussion.
Yeah, I was just trying to understand that a little more. So I thought especially things like self-efficacy and optimism, because that is, since we've been talking about positive psychology, and Salutogenesis also talked about that. So my feeling is optimism and self-efficacy is integral to the sense of coherence. So I was just trying to understand why he felt it isn't, it is different.
Yeah, I think it's more about the way he defined manageability, comprehensibility, meaningfulness, but those could also be aspects of self-efficacy, for example. But I think his approach is more about these underlying assumptions, like health, disease on the continuum, and also that it's very contextualized, in the sense that it's very related to specific or general context. That is what makes it different, I think. Yeah.
Thank you.
Namaste, everyone. Namaste, Ingunji. This wonderful section. And so we are everyone thinking and planning and practicing, helping others to come in the positive. I mean, psychologists also trying, and yoga people also trying, but they're very naturally, even though born as a human, we didn't really reach to the humane, most of us. So in that already people are mostly like a negativity. It's really attracting. As Amaji says, whatever you want to do, the good thing also always the opposite, is there in the negativity. So people also very mean, and most of them, like when they are thinking about themselves only, and in that thing, we want to bring the positive thing, but it's very hard with the people because they have still because of the animal brain still very strong, and so people has to think that they don't want to keep this, they want to bring this positivity in their mind and the health wise also, then it's help in the mental health also, no? So what's the effect, or what's the thing you think that it will help in the with the psychology thing, that with the people, that they can bring the animal brain or the mean thing, everything they can bring down under their control? How much you think on their own, if they didn't think with the other practices, whether they can succeed?
I think this is where the notion of awareness comes in very strongly, that people, I think we are all on this continuum. Sometimes we are closer to the top, sometimes we are closer to the negative. And we all have these sides that are not the best version of ourselves. We have selfishness, we have greed, we have lots of these tendencies in us. And I think we have to work with ourselves. This is about svadhyaya, that we have to reflect, we have to understand, we have to try to live according to the niyama and yamas. We have to work, especially from a yogic perspective, to bring out the good in ourselves. But I also think that bringing out the good in ourselves will always inspire others. So I think if we are health personnel, if we are yogis, if we work with others, I think if we show our positive sides or humane sides, then that side is encouraged in others too. But I think this is a continuous struggle or work. It's easy to fall back to being less good, less humane. And you see, especially in certain situations like war, like we have a war now with Russia invading Ukraine, you see that brings out the worst side of normally good people. So all of us, we're always at this risk of falling back. So it takes effort on the person, it takes effort on the society to bring these more humane, positive sides of people.
Thank you.
Namaste, namaste, dear Ingunn, namaste, everyone.
Thank you.
Actually, Ingunn, I would like to thank you for this answer, Devasena. Thank you so much for asking, of course. I think that, oftentimes we think that swadhyaya is a necessary step for the self, right? The word itself, swa, means the self. But it is my experience that makes us better teachers also. Of course, it makes us better people, obviously, but particularly in the field of teaching and therapy and care. Because when we accept these challenges in ourselves, we may be able to also understand and accept them in others. And it was my experience, for example, when working in a jail, that it was absolutely essential for me to go in that social context with the least possible amount of judgment. And so the opposite of voyeurism that oftentimes, unfortunately, is found in therapeutical settings like that, in social settings, where therapists may want to go in to help the other without realizing that the process begins with the self. And so I think your comment on war and extreme contexts is such a poignant one, because we are so easily prone to judge when the context is not our own. And I think it's a great yogic quality and essential to yoga bhavana to open ourselves to really looking at society and what people go through, the crazy things that people really have to go through, and find in ourselves the seed of that judgment because it will certainly sprout at some point in our lives. So thank you. I just wanted to confirm how important this conversation is and how meaningful it is, especially for me, actually. It's been a huge impact in my life to put myself in contexts where I had to take off this cloth of being good and being this and that, because life can truly push us sometimes in situations where we don't know how we will react. And it's important to know that we don't know, so that we humble ourselves in the process of supporting others. So thank you so much, both of you, for raising this really important question.
Can I just say thank you, Sangeeta? And I've seen several times your video with your work in prison, and I think it's your humbleness that makes you relate to those mainly Afro-American women, and in a way that they don't feel threatened, because people in underprivileged situations, they are very vulnerable, and they easily react to people who they feel look down upon them in a way. So I think the way you meet them, enable them to be in contact with themselves and their resources in an amazing way. Yeah, so it's a very important point. Yeah.
So I would like to thank Professor Ingunn for this wonderful presentation and the beautiful discussion we have had today after that. Thanking Professor Bengt and as well as Professor Claudia for being with us this morning. I know for those of you in Europe, it's very early start, and luckily time has changed, so you get 1 extra hour. But otherwise, it's quite a thing. And next week we have the session coming up next week, which is the concept of the Chaturvida Purushartha, Dharma, Karma, Ikigai as models to understand the purpose of human life by Yogacharya Sridharan sir, one of India's topmost Yogacharyas. And then from our own adjunct faculty, Dr. Vaishali, structured music therapy based classroom activities for children with special needs. Looking at a section of society that needs our special attention. And I think we are trying to make sure that we cover all aspects of the human life in this webinar. And thank our participants for with us for this session today. Thank you so much for being here. Looking forward to continuing to learn with all of you. Om Loka Samasta Sukhino Bhavantu Sarve Janaha Sukhino Bhavantu. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Hari Om. Thank you, thank you, thank you.